Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I am playing around with some vintage quilt blocks. I have some vintage 9 patches and some vintage 4 patches, and I'm going to put them on the design wall and rearrange them and see what I come up with. Okay, these blocks are different sizes. I have some 6-inch 9 patches and I have some 4-inch 4 patches, and I have a lot more 4 patches than I do the 9 patches. And I also have some 12-inch blocks. These are more modern, as you can see. These are maple leaf blocks, so those are going to go in a completely different quilt. And then I have a set of double T blocks that I still need to clean, and there's enough of them though. I think they can go in a quilt by themselves. So I'm going to work with these, and I haven't quite decided what I want to do with them yet. I don't know if I want to do like a row quilt and like have a row of 9 patches and then a row of 4 patches, or if I want to mix them up. Of course, when you've got 2 different size blocks, you know, they're not going to go together size wise, so you know, you've got to either enlarge these blocks or just come up with another design idea. Now I have a couple of these 9 patch blocks that match. Like I have 2 of these, I have 2 of these, and I have 2 of these. Now nothing else really matches well that I can see through my stack. No, I do have a couple of these. I think there's 3 of these. So otherwise they're different colors, and you know, just the typical vintage blocks that you find. You know, they just made blocks out of the fabrics that they had. So I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to pin these up. Now my design board is insulating. It's an insulation board that you put on your house. It doesn't have flannel over or anything, so they won't stick. I have to pin them up, so I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to start pinning them up. Now I have washed them and I have ironed them. I have not trimmed them down or squared them up or anything like that. They're just the size they were made. And I used Quilt soap, and you can get that at your local quilt store, or if your local quilt store isn't open, you can order it online from I think it's Quilter's Rule. I'll have to go get my bottle of it and look at it. So I'm just going to pin up a couple of these and just kind of play around with them and see what I like. Okay, so this would give me a pretty small quilt, but it's kind of interesting. Now when you do row quilts, you can also put sashing in between each block, or you could do it just between each row. You know, you have a lot of options there. When I do that with vintage blocks, I prefer to have a vintage reproduction fabric if I can find it. Those are getting harder to find than they used to, so there's that. What else? Another thing you can do is we have different size blocks. You know, you could do like 1 row of the 9 patches, 1 row of the smaller 4 patches, and alternate them that way. You can also like make this the center piece and then surround it with the 4 patches if you can get the math to work out, and that would be doing this. And I don't think I have any of these blocks that are the same. I think they're all different. So I'm just going to start pinning them up and see what happens. And this would be a little bit short, so it's not going to match up perfectly, but I could also put in an extra strip of fabric right there to get that filled in, or put it in the center somewhere. So there's ways that you can do this, but I kind of like the idea of just putting everything up on the design wall and look at it for a couple of days and rearrange the blocks as you know, I think as I like, just just come up with different ideas and decide what I want to do. And I don't know, I haven't decided. You know, this is the first time I put them up, so I'll just keep putting them up, and then I'll show you what I come up with at the end of this first round of playing with the blocks. Okay, at this point I have the 9 patches up, and then I have the 1 row of 4 patches surrounding them, and it's obvious that I'll have to, if I choose this design layout, I'm going to have to do some filler pieces in there to get everything to line up correctly. I don't think this is what I'm going to do, but you know, it's good to have at least an idea of an option anyway. So I think for this, if I want to combine these blocks all together, I'm going to need to do them by rows, like do a row of the 9 patches, a row of the 4 patches, and then I think filling in on the ends instead of like filling in a piece here and then a strip right there. I think that might be a better option. Of course, if I did fill in, you know, like here, a piece here and a piece there, and I'd have to do the same over here and a piece up here, you know, that would give it a more modern look. You know, that might be interesting too. Just, I don't think that's anything I want to do though. I'm kind of leaning towards something that is a little easier to put together, not requiring a lot of thought. Just kind of where I'm at right now. So I'm going to do some rearranging, and I'm going to do a couple of rows and see if I like that any better. Okay, in this layout here I have alternated the rows of 4 patches with rows of 9 patches, and then on the right and the left side I put a row of the 4 patches. Now this is not the design I've decided to go with, and I just have this here so that I can get a good look at the blocks and see what they look like all together. Now, one thing that is pretty clear to me is that the era of the blocks are not the same. The 9 patches are 1920s blocks, and the 4 patches lean more towards the 1940s. So even though when I alternate the rows like this, they kind of blend in together, it's just too confusing. It's there, you can't see the individual blocks, and it's just not something that I want to go with. So I'm going to remove those 4 patches and just look straight at the 9 patch blocks for right now. And here I have 3 rows of the 9 patches, and there are 7 across, and I'm just kind of getting a feel for those and deciding if I want to put them into rows like this and put sashing between the rows, if I want to put sashing between the blocks. Do I want to do alternate blocks? You know, what do I want to do? A lot depends on how big a quilt do I want. Do I want just a small wall quilt to put up on my wall, or do I want something that I can use as a lap quilt? So all those things kind of take into play. And how many borders do I want? How big do I want those borders to be? All of that is a consideration. And I don't have any additional blocks to add to it, so I have to use what I have on hand. Okay, here's what I decided to do. Instead of using sashing, I decided to use alternate blocks. I had some of this. It's a kind of a mottled cream colored fabric in my stash. It was set aside for a backing for a quilt, but that quilt was never made, and it probably will never be made. It's a pattern that I just cannot get into. So I decided to go ahead and use that backing fabric, and now I have a nice little lap size top. Now this is still in rows. I have to sew the rows together and put on some borders. So the next thing to do would be to sew them together, measure the top, and select fabric for the borders. Here is the completed quilt top. I am much happier with this design idea than I am with combining them with the 4-patch blocks, or even just setting them blocks just one next to the other. I think this way the blocks are showing better. There's not as much competition between the blocks, and I can actually see the 9-patch design in these blocks. So I am a lot happier with this than any of the other ideas that I had, and it makes a nice size quilt. I have the inner border is a 1.5-inch border, and that is made from an 1880s reproduction fabric, and the outer border is also an 1880s reproduction fabric. And the inner border is actually a deep navy blue with some stars on it, and the outer border is kind of just the reverse. There's stars on that one too, but the stars are navy, and then the background is the cream color, and that cream color matches the fabric and the alternate blocks really well. So I'm really happy with the way this turned out, and can't wait to get started quilting on it. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.